Commissioner Nocita,
Not here.
Commissioner Neely,
Here.
Commissioner West, Commissioner Smith, Commissioner Norris,
Here.
Commissioner Walters,
Here.
Commissioner Shaw,
Here.
Commissioner Crocker,
Here.
Commissioner Peterson,
Here.
and Chair Slack.
Okay, before we get started, I just wanted to mention that we don't have a quorum, so we're unable to take a vote on agenda topic 5B, which is the storefront grant, unless we have a quorum. So we're going to proceed with the rest of the meeting that we can continue, and if we're unable to complete the meeting, we'll have to reschedule that for another time. First agenda item. Pardon?
Citizen comment.
What?
Here.
It's not working. Sorry, technology. Okay. Agenda item 2, citizen comments. No comments.
Under citizen comments.
Okay. All right. So agenda item 3, future agenda items. Do we have any suggestions for future agenda items? Okay. Number 4, adoption of the agenda.
To approve for adoption of the agenda.
We can't vote.
You can't vote, but we're supposed to anyway.
No, we'll continue on.
No. The chair has discretion of saying if there are no objections, we will proceed with the agenda in the order in which it is listed.
Perfect.
Here's Robbie. We can vote on the agenda.
Okay.
We got a quorum.
Okay, so agenda item 5A, general business, the Rivers project update, and I'd like to call Dan Brentlaw.
Thank you, Vice Chair Walters and members of the Commission. The purpose of our discussion tonight is to get an update on the Rivers project from CenterCal. I know they have a PowerPoint presentation for you, and Fred Brunig is here, as well as John Paul Wardy and Julie Gravo. So they'll be here. They are here to present this and answer any questions you may have. And again, the purpose of this meeting is not to make any decisions. It's only to hear an update on the project. And just a little bit of background, the staff has been working with CenterCal over the last at least a year. We have a draft DDA that is close to being complete, but again, that's not really the discussion tonight, any of the details of the DDA. It's more just to hear, again, from the developer on the status of their project. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Fred Brunig.
Madam Chair and members of the Commission, thank you very much for taking the time to listen to the Rivers. I wanted to be here tonight with you because we've been a little quiet. We obviously wanted, there was an election to be done in the city, and while the election was being done, we were finishing up some last minute details on, I think, the development agreement and looking at the co-tenancy and such for the center. And we wanted to just mostly be here to talk about the project and answer any questions that you might have, or to just, again, restart a dialogue for the new council and the new commission next year as we hopefully move forward with the Rivers project. The first thing people often do when I talk to them about a new project right now is they say, you must be crazy starting a new project in an economy like this. And you know, I think back over my career, and some of our best projects were started in the worst economy. And I think part of that is because of a saying I have, and that is when 90% of the hunters have left the forest, you're bound to bag some game. There's very little competition out there right now, and one of the biggest complaints we're getting from our tenants is they're not getting enough new deals to fill up their dance card. There also are very few great retail sites left in the greater Portland metro area than you would find at the Rivers. That's why we do have over 500,000 feet of tenants who have indicated that they want to be here and they want to move forward. We still have a lot of details to work out. I'm not here to tell you that every question has been answered. We still need to work out some final issues relative to the DEQ and certainly answer any questions the new council may have. But I have a high level of confidence that we can successfully complete this project if that's what the city wishes us to do. And what I wanted to do is we've had a number of comments that we've heard from the community over the last year or so. A lot of it relative to the economy, a lot of it relative to why shopping centers, why now are people still shopping. Based on our portfolio, there certainly are. Our portfolio at the end of this year will be at 97% occupancy, higher net income than we've ever had in our company's history. By next spring, we'll be at about 98% occupancy. Tenants are getting much more bullish. They're having real estate committee meetings. They're wanting to do deals. And one of the things, as bad as it seems to be here in Oregon, it's a lot worse in other parts of the country. What we're finding is that because of the urban growth boundary, I'm a big supporter of that, we haven't had a lot of these edge developments that have died a horrible death as they have in many other parts of the country. And as a result, more retailers find that they're doing better in markets like Oregon than they are in markets like Phoenix or Las Vegas. And as a result, we're getting kicked up the ladder in terms of desirability. And while it may seem like there are an awful lot of shopping centers in this country, the Portland metro area is the second least retailed metropolitan statistical area in the country. The only one with less retail per capita would be Manhattan. And we have about 80% of the average, and some markets are way overbuilt. I believe that Portland is not one of them. Based on what you'll see here in our presentation, I think you'll at least understand why we believe that to be the case. What we're going to be talking about are just projects that we've built in the Portland area. We focused on just the new developments as opposed to the remodels because we thought the new developments were more appropriate. But in the last decade, we've done about 3 million square feet of retail and mixed-use space in the greater Portland area. And based on our success with these projects, we just wanted to run you quickly through why we think that our town centers are really a catalyst for retail development and economic development well beyond our own projects. And Commissioners, can you see all this on your screens? I'm not sure. I just want to be sure. Thank you.
There's a box in the middle of it.
Yeah, this funny box that is the out of range box.
This first slide I wanted to show you was one of the first deals. This is the project that I fell in love with the community and decided to move to Gresham, Oregon, and I still live there. The Portlanders are still kind enough to give me a visa to come over to the west side on occasion, but I have lived in Gresham for about 10 years now, and proud to call it home. This is what the Gresham Station site looked like circa 1994, and this is pretty much what it looked like when we found it. As you can see, it was really just a bunch of cabbage fields and not much else. There was some industrial on the lower right-hand corner that had been closed and unoccupied for many, many years, and yet this area had been designated as the civic center for the city of Gresham, and Mayor Roberts at the time was really excoriated because she had built a road to nowhere. It was kind of a sore point with the city, but we felt there was a lot to be done in the area, and our phase one consisted of about 400,000 feet of retail. And as you can see here at the completion of phase one, you still had a lot of open spaces, but our retail center was built. This goes back to about 1998. Very soon after we built the first center, you'll note all of a sudden new housing was built next to us. Plans were built for other buildings and office buildings around us. Within about 6 years of our opening, we had developed a couple $100 million of additional development that went above and beyond Gresham Station. The thing I'm probably most proud of in all of that project is we actually were able to do educational facilities there too. We did the Center for Advanced Learning, which was an important part of Gresham Station. The building I'm probably most proud of is the Mount Hood Allied Health Center there, which they were kind enough to call the Bruning Center. And we understand we've been able to double the number of nursing graduates who are going out of Mount Hood as a result of that program. That center is performing extremely well. There are medical office buildings, residential units, townhomes, apartments, senior living, retail. And if you would like to, I'd be so proud to take any of you or anybody from the city and do a walking tour of this or any of our other projects. So you can see the kind of economic development we've created Just some views of the center, and again, this technology is about 10 years old already, but just some of the different mixed-use pieces of the site. Difficult site in that it had a lot of elevation changes as well. Excuse me, I skipped a site there. But this kind of shows you a sort of a sense of how much, about $350 million of investment, including our first phase, about 5,000 permanent jobs, including retail and construction. We, in our retail centers, we're proud that we do a lot more than just create entry-level jobs. In our projects, we'll have hundreds of family wage jobs in our retail centers. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we talk about the mix we propose for Oregon City. But, you know, the managers of our stores, their assistant managers, commission salespeople, the office workers, and all the rest are I think, pretty glad in today's economy of all the jobs that we were able to create in Gresham. And we had a nice quote from Mayor Bemis, who is sort of one of our PR people, I guess, because I think he likes what we've done in that area a lot. And I'd recommend, again, check with any city official and any community that we've worked with, and I think they'll give us pretty high marks. Another one that we recently completed, you might have noticed a giant blue and yellow box on the 205 freeway up by the airport with a very small, tastefully done sign. This is our sense of specialite IKEA, and IKEA, of course, has come and was the catalyst for this site. I look at IKEA at the airport in much the same way that I would look at a Cabela's for Oregon City. You have something that's unique. There'll only be one of them in the Portland metro area ever. This particular store is, I think, number 4 now in the IKEA chain in North America in terms of sales, so it's doing very, very well. You might have heard recently IKEA just gave a bicycle to every one of their employees to encourage people to ride to work. They're a very progressive company. They actually give their employees an extra $1 a day in pay if they ride a bike to come to work. So it's an honor to work with a company like that. But this is what Cascade Station looked like when we started the project. Office brokers, hotel brokers, everybody told us there was no market out there. This was the city of Portland's equivalent of the street to nowhere. Sat there like this for years and years and years. All it really took was the right idea, and I think the right idea started with IKEA. IKEA's opening sparked the 850,000 feet of retail that was built at the site. We're now 98% leased. The center was opened in the middle of the recession, and we're close to 100% occupancy. The most amazing thing to me, though, about the project is what has happened around us in the very short time since we've opened. There are 3 new hotels there. There are 3 new office buildings. The Port of Portland relocated their offices and have now taken occupancy there at the airport. And the FBI headquarters is now under construction out there. And what the brokerage community tells me is that none of this would have happened if our center hadn't come there. So if you, I just like to view a Mount Hood here, so pardon another shot. But, and again, some views. And this is important because we will have some big format retailers, like, for example, potentially a Cabela's in our project. So some of these larger boxes and the architecture are things that we'll obviously have to deal with. But again, about $400 million total investment in this project and the surrounding hotels and such. Again, about 5,000 jobs created. And you can see kind of the breakdown of office, retail, and hotel. And lastly, I'd like to talk a little bit about, at least in the Portland area, Bridgeport Village. Bridgeport Village was a quarry. It was a quarry that had been badly filled by the county. So Bridgeport Village has a methane issue. We actually had to put in a full methane recovery system out there. So some of the same issues that we would be dealing with for the riverside being a trash dump, we've had to deal with in other projects, and Bridgeport would be the closest equivalent with a full active and passive methane recovery system. But this was a quarry. About the only memories we could get of the history of the site was a bunch of high schoolers from Tigard and Tualatin and memories of their dates after the prom. But, you know, not a lot of history other than a quarry there. And if you look at the area around us, you'll see there was a lot of really old stuff around us. We had an old Shiloh Inn Hotel. You might remember that was there, that was going into bankruptcy. There were a lot of empty industrial buildings. I mean, there just wasn't much around the site. The only large retailer that was in the area would have been Kmart at the time, and a lot of people said you couldn't build the center there, compete with the mall, which was only 3.5 miles away, Washington Square. But this is what we built out there, and again, if you look at the village here, this is very similar to what we're proposing for Oregon City. 4 blocks of shop buildings with a Paseo system, as well as a really nice plaza. And if you look at this slide as well, you'll see a lot of those old ratty buildings have all been replaced. Around our site since we came in, there's a new retail center across the way. There's a new Whole Foods market. There is I think 3 new office buildings have been built. Trammell Crow Residential is just starting up a 550-unit high-end apartment program around us, all of which they said wouldn't have happened but for Bridgeport Village. Just another oblique angle of this. And this was one, again, that required quite a bit of roadway improvements, as we're talking about for the rivers. You'd never know it had been a landfill. You'd never know that there's a full methane recovery system on the site. The center is chugging along at about a $600 per square foot sales. We're about 98% occupancy. And we are very proud that we've brought a lot of new tenants into Oregon for the first time. And we didn't take a single tenant out of the downtown area or adjacent, anywhere from our project. So it's all net new jobs, net new retail. One of the important things about our centers is, unlike the strip malls that you see and such, every one of our centers we see as a gathering place. We do summer concert series. We do an awful lot of events for children. We do holiday events, which draw in thousands and thousands of people. Personally, I think we have the best Santa in Portland. I mean, that might be debated, but I think we've got the best. What you try to do is, and this is a nice little quote that we had from Mayor Ogden from the city of Tualatin, is do no harm. We try to take the medical oath. Don't do any harm to the existing retailers in town. Don't damage it. Add value to the community. And in this particular case, you can see we've created again about 3,500 jobs, retail, office, hotel, residential coming on now with the Trammell Crow project. And I think when we started in this project, the vacancy in the traditional downtown area was probably about 35 to 40%. It's down to probably less than 6 or 7% today. The same thing is true in Gresham. This is another one of our projects, and unfortunately it's in that hated state, California. This is in Danville, California.
Can you rewind that? You said the downtown had 30% vacancy.
When we started.
And then after it came in, the vacancy was reduced?
Yes.
So, tell me those numbers again, because...
Yeah, well, I don't know I would estimate around 5 or 6% vacancy in the downtown area now. In the historic, like the lakes area.
But the downtown area isn't anywhere close to Bridgeport Village.
Well, that's interesting, but what happens is we keep people in town. It's not an artful term, but I call it the cowpath theory. When you keep people in the community, this happened in Gresham, and we're also not very close to the downtown there. I mean, it's a ways to the historic downtown there. But what happens is people were used to driving from Gresham to Clackamas Mall or to Lloyd Center. In the case of Tualatin, they were going to Washington Square, they were going to downtown Portland, but they were leaving their community for their basic shopping experiences. When they stay in the community for retail shopping, it's much more likely that they'll probably stay there to get their hair done, to visit their travel agent, to visit their local bank, because it's a closer travel pattern. We think we actually save a huge amount of gas. We did a study in Gresham that showed we save about 6.5 million gallons a year for people not taking that longer trip, to the farther away centers by providing a greater portion of their shopping options locally. And again, you'd be more than welcome to talk to Mayor Ogden or any of the city staff there, but I think everyone has said we've been a very positive effect on the historic downtown, even though we're probably about a half a mile away. So again, activities, it's all about gathering places. It's all about, honoring the community. It's all about creating a spot where people can come, and we think this is especially important in Oregon City. And again, I will say that the snow you see there is manufactured snow. Everything in LA is manufactured. One of the things we try to do is we try to create places that have art. We like the idea of creating art in public places. It's something that's important to all of our new projects. It's certainly an important part of what we plan for Oregon City. A couple of those images there, the one on the left is from Bridgeport. The others are from our Black Hawk project, where we did a suite of sculptures honoring teachers. Our partners, is the California State Teachers Retirement System. And this suite of sculptures was basically to honor the teachers' gift of imagination that they give their students. I like this quote especially. Every child is an artist. The problem is how to remain an artist once we grow up. It's also how do you remain an adult once you grow up? That is a problem. One of the comments that I've heard is that there are no new shopping centers being built in the country today. Actually, there are quite a few. We're building a couple of them, and this is one we're building right now in Farmington, Utah. When you see this project, you'll see it's very proximate to a freeway system, similar to Oregon City. Farmington is the smallest town. Farmington is only about 17,000 people, but it's in a trade area of about 350,000. It's the second community that was ever settled in Oregon, so Oregon City has them beat by one, or in Utah rather. And again, this is we're under construction, as we'll see in a moment, but this is kind of the look. This is sort of the central plaza, the central quad. This is sort of similar to what we'd be planning for the Rivers project. Again, it's a gathering place, a place where the community can thrive, but also as a place to keep people home and then allow for other elements of the city to thrive. The historic downtown in Farmington was probably equally important, I think, as it would be to you here in Oregon City, because there's a lot of historicity. It was actually settled just a few months after the first settlers came across with Brigham Young, and so the preservation of that is, of course, of vital importance. But here again, what you'll see public spaces. This is a model that we had created of this project to give our tenants a better idea of what it's going to look like. This is some proof that it's currently under construction, although with the snow you'd hardly know it. But again, we're opening the first phase this coming May. That'll be about the first 400,000 feet. The rest will follow in 2012. This may be a picture you're familiar with. It shows that it rained in 1905. Nothing's new. One of the things that's struck us about Oregon City is the wonderful history of Oregon City, and it's a real shame someone put a garbage dump at the end of the Oregon Trail. And I think that's been a real detriment to the community, and that was further probably exacerbated when Clackamas started developing, and it took a lot of the business to the north. Our view of our project is it's just sort of a placeholder for the city. If we can invest a couple $100 million in Oregon City, do the right kind of tenants, the right kind of place, then what we can do is we can create a spot where the downtown businesses can thrive. We can bring other quality business to Oregon City, and that's part of my philosophy of capital, chasing capital. Or as in the aerospace industry, they say, no bucks, no buck riders. What we hope to be able to do with our project is capture some of the history. We would like to replicate some of these scenes that you see in these photos, so that as you go down a part of our mall, you see something that would look very much like this facade, or facade, as our last president would say. And what, I'm sorry, no. I know, but still, it's always good color. Basically, the idea would be to replicate some of the historic architecture, but blend in modern architecture, blend in modern styles. You know, Oregon architecture is not big wooden logs and snow on the roof. It's something unique. We'd like to create an architectural signature that would be unique for Oregon City, and one that wouldn't be a Bridgeport Village, it wouldn't be a Cascade, it would be something we think about together with architectural charrettes, and hopefully meeting with the community and the neighborhoods and with the Planning Commission, so that we could really come up with something special. And one way to honor that history is to think about what the history was. You know, if you think about the Oregon Trail, my wife's mother's mother came across in a prairie schooner, but only got about 1,000 miles before they gave up and settled in what is now kind of the near Midwest. But some wonderful stories from that. I think part of what we'd like to do is bring some of the history of the Oregon Trail alive. We've been talking to some sculptors who would recreate some stories from the trail. I've been meeting with people like Susan Petrillo. Actually, I had lunch with her just this past Sunday, who wrote the book, Women's Voices from the Oregon Trail. I think that creating some of those stories and bringing them to life as part of a historic reenactment that hopefully will help bring the End of the Trail Museum back to life is a very important part of what we'd like to accomplish. And again, it takes capital to do that. You have to have, if you don't have the investment, if you don't have the attractor to bring people to you, you're not likely to be successful. But the Oregon Trail only existed for a few decades. You know, it was an important part of Oregon's history, but there was a lot of stuff that was here before the Oregon Trail. From an Anglo settlement, or I guess you can call the Canadians Anglos, I see Dr. McLaughlin. I'm glad you didn't bring team. But Dr. Young, early on, he did something very brave. His government said, keep the American settlers out. He helped them. There was a big battle in terms of who would wind up owning this part of the world. The Spanish, the Russians, the British, the Americans. He helped the early settlers. I'm not sure if he was the one that Mrs. Short slapped when she came across the trail and he said you can't settle here. But with the Hudson Bay Company, it's interesting. The early European settlers in the area were here to hunt and fish. Sounds like Cabela's to me. The area was actually settled thousands of years before that by Native American tribes, the upper, Chinook tribes. Obviously there's a huge history there that we'd also like to honor. We'd like to work with the local tribal councils and maybe have a statue or two representing the Native Americans and the gifts they gave the early settlers. But I think without their assistance and help, it would have been a much harder life for those first few people who came across, not knowing where to plant, where to fish, where to hunt, what to do. A paltry gift to be given smallpox and venereal disease in exchange. But nonetheless, at the end of the day, I think having, honoring that history would be important, because that history was here for thousands and thousands of years. I have on my desk artifacts from pre-Millingstone Horizon caches that we found in projects in California, and when you hold them in your hand, you realize what a special place it was, and we know nothing about it. And yet there was a wonderful civilization that was a very advanced civilization that has kind of been lost to us, except in the John Wayne movies. And it would be nice to put some real history back and some of the real sense of what it was like even before the days of the Hudson Bay and the Northwest trading companies. This is our site. This is the garbage dump. This is the rivers. This is whatever you want to call it. You can see the Home Depot next to it. You can see that it's a little bit of an odd shape. But what our desire would be is to create a center that has the elements of both Bridgeport Village and Cascade Station. This is a view architecturally of what we would look at as the central court, similar to what you see at a Bridgeport Village, what you saw in some of the images early on. This is where we'd have the gathering places. This is where we'd have the sculpture. This is where we'd hopefully have reenactors from the End of the Trail Museum coming to talk to people about the history of Oregon City. It's an open space. This area would be about twice as big as the area that we have at Bridgeport Village, just in terms of context, if you happen to go by Bridgeport. If you look at an overall site plan, you see what looks like a lot of parking, but if you get down on the ground level, what you see is a very large village. The shops around the theater are actually four-sided, so they face all the way around. The large retailer that we have at the bottom of the space, we're currently showing that would be the footprint favored by Cabela's in terms of a part of the site that they have told us that they'd like to be on. And then you can see the existing Home Depot, and the Home Depot really established where the roads have to go. Home Depot is not a part of our project. They have an approval right over anything that happens, and so we don't have the ability to change that. But if you can imagine coming up off of Washington and seeing, of course, the Home Depot, but then coming around and seeing the village, seeing the roundabout, potentially seeing the Cabela's. One thing that I think a lot of people may not realize is how difficult the site is geographically. Over the years, of course, as it was a landfill, it got higher and higher. This is a graphic. This is elevation section A. This is off on Abernethy, and you can see how high the site is over the sidewalk and the street. So getting connections to the street and making any kind of a grid system is very difficult, because you'd really have to cut into the trash, and if you cut into the trash, you lose your DEQ permit. So what you have to do is just kind of figure out a way to ingress and egress the site without doing harm, and while you're encapsulating the trash. And so again, this would just show from an elevated elevation across the street, kind of where the county yards are, what people would see if you were walking on the sidewalk along Abernethy by our site. As you can see from down there, you couldn't even see the buildings from that elevation. This is along Washington Street. It was the section that the other section that you saw on that site plan. And again, as you can see here, you can see where the street is, the parking area that is along the street, which could, we're talking with Cabela's about some potential uses that they would like to use that space for, but if it were just as parking or park and ride during the weekdays, you can see how much elevation change there is before you get up to the side on the right. I would say the average difference in elevation is about 20 feet. In some cases, it gets up to 30. So you're talking about a plateau of a site, if you will. So again, our desire is to continue our discussions to move the DDA forward. We know that there have been some concerns about our project. We recognize that everybody's concerns are valid. If the majority of the new council wishes to see our project go forward, we'd love to be a part of it and help make it happen and invest in part of the future of Oregon City. If it's not the council's choice to move forward, you've been very kind, and this has been a waste of all your time this evening. But at the end of the day, we'd like to still, see if we can make this happen. Again, when you look at a project like Oregon City and the rivers, if you think about job creation, you'll probably have several hundred at the minimum family wage jobs just in our project. The manager of a store like Cabela's is making a very solid wage. His assistants are making a very solid wage. A number of the salespeople on commission that are selling those outrageously priced, fishing rods and such, are on commission. They're making a terrific family wage. But then again, so is the manager of the theater, so is the owner of the restaurant. You have 80 or 90 different businesses on that site that are creating value. I would argue that a lot of that value is staying in the community, because even if you have a corporation that might be headquartered in Minneapolis, for example, that has a store in the center, that store, well, take IKEA. IKEA is headquartered in Sweden, but there are 350 employees in that IKEA store at the airport. There'll be at least a couple hundred, in Cabela's maybe 250, maybe 300. When you think about it, those people are living here. They're on the tax rolls. Their income tax is going to the community. That's what's funding our schools now. It's not property tax anymore. At the end of the day, it's jobs. And a project like ours can create 1,500 to 2,000 jobs. And then you add the multiplier effect of the other companies that want to come to the area. The last bad joke I'll leave you with is the one I've probably said to you before, but I always say that when a CEO of a company comes to an area, one of the very first things the CEO asks is, where will my husband shop? And Cabela's would be a good choice for the husband. But basically, people want to. It's so painful. It takes a while for the pain to sink in. But it's really true. And you laugh, but it's true. And where do people want to go? If you're putting a new office building in, you want a place where people go and have lunch. You want a place where people can go have meetings. You want a place where new capital is being invested, so you're not the only new dog in town. And we found it in every project we've done that, when you put in this investment capital, if you do it right, if you mind the quality, if you mind the aesthetics of the project, if you will, then other good things will come and follow you. And even in a down economy, when we built Gresham Station, unemployment in the state was 10.5%, or 10.6 now. You had people telling us we couldn't do projects in Gresham because people wouldn't go to a bookstore because they don't read in Gresham. We have all the naysayers. When we did, every center we do is going to be the last center ever built on Earth. I don't know why that is, but they always seem to be full. They always seem to thrive. They have great sales. They employ people, and they make other good things happen in the community. And again, just in closing, what I suggest is that we'd love you to come and see what we do. Come out, talk to the city, talk to the mayors, talk to the retailers. Come out and see what we do in these projects. I think we're a good add to a community, and we do add value. This is a very difficult site. I don't mean to minimize it. The methane has to be very carefully contained. Because you're on a landfill, you have to do everything on pilings. You have to put in an active methane recovery system, but we've done that before. We know how to do it. It's been done many times across the country. We have people tell us at Bridgeport that if you lit a match, the whole center would explode. It hasn't happened yet. We don't expect it to. My office is there, so I'm, betting my keister on it. But basically, I think we feel like we can handle these issues. I don't know that there are many people who honestly could in this environment. One of the reasons we can, again, is we have this marvelous partner, which is this California State Teacher Retirement System. On a go-forward basis, we will only put 40% debt on our projects. We put in 55 to 60% equity in our projects, and very few other people do that. That's why very few other people are getting loans today. But when you make that kind of an equity commitment, you care about how it turns out. It's not the kind of thing that you just walk away from after it's built. And again, in our structure here, we're not here to talk economics, but any assistance we get from Urban Renewal only comes after we successfully completed the project to get our return back to where CalSTRS needs to have their return. Not a nickel is spent if we fail to deliver. And so with that, I thank you for your time. My silent partner, who was supposed to be sitting here and is the younger and smarter of the two of us, would maybe like to come up now. Wouldn't you, John Paul? I don't know if there's any questions that the councilors might have or the commissioners. Thank you, John Paul. Or if not, I don't know if it's public comment, but we're at your disposal. And I personally intend to stay through after the meeting, so later if there are any questions that you have or anyone in the audience about our project or what we do, I'm happy to stay on as long as it takes an answer. So again, thank you for listening.
Thank you. Would you like to introduce yourself for people that don't know you?
Sure. John Paul-Wordy.
And I believe we have some questions. My queuing is not working for. Yeah, I've got the audience. I think we've got some commissioner questions. Thank you. Okay, Greg Neely. Do you have a question?
Well, yeah, I guess I do. I know it's going to come out in the draft development agreement that we set up with you, but in terms of the contributions that the Renewal District would make, what areas would they be in? I mean, I can see infrastructure and so forth. I'm just kind of curious.
Really meant to adjust the cost of the project. The entire project is on piles, plus all the methane and the infrastructure. That was really where the costs were going.
When we initially had discussions with you, of course, we were visualizing would-be partners in the area of what we call the Joe Campbell project, and of course we were very lucky to, and well, it wasn't luck, it was a good work here of our mayor and others to get that through a stimulus package, and I presume that yeah, it was a stimulus, excuse me, probably was earmarked. Oh, was it earmarked? Very good. In any case, the fact that we have that, it would seem that probably even the commitment we were talking about before wouldn't even be as great as it was from the city standpoint.
That's all subtracted, yes.
Yeah. I guess a lot of the other questions I think that I had, you've addressed. I just kind of curious, after we built this site, would you consider moving to Orange City instead of being in Gresham? And maybe you can make your office at the...
Well, why don't we see if we complete it, if the citizens would want us to have completed, I'll certainly consider it. But Mayor Bemis may want me to hang around. We love Gresham. East County is a wonderful place to live.
More comments, but maybe a few questions intermixed in the comments. I don't know if this is. I'm bending it my way. Okay. There's a lot of great aspects of this project, and really the concerns that I've had over the last couple of years are mainly because it's not at the level that I want to see it yet. And so some of the questions that you've even talked about tonight, I've never felt like I've had enough of an answer to kind of make me feel comfortable enough yet. And one of the key things is specifically, we've all been to Bridgeport. I go there a lot. I don't think I've ever gone to Bridgeport and gone anywhere else within the vicinity. I go there and I come home. So I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about and I always have been, with the fact that there's this gap between our core downtown and this site, and the access that's so close to the freeway that we're basically, my concerns, we're providing services to a whole new city that's not really even attached to our city. And that's a generalization, but there's a kind of a gap there, and so it encourages people in a little way to get off the freeway, go to the rivers, and leave. And so the real connection, how do we really make sure that connection happens to the downtown? Subway closed yesterday on downtown. We have, I don't know, I can list 10 probably restaurants that have opened in Oregon City in the last 10 years or 5 years that have been there a year and then go away. So bringing more restaurants and more shops, how do we keep if we can't keep what we have, how is adding more going to keep the ones that we currently have? Especially in the case where, you know, we all go to the movies at Hilltop, and now we're going to build maybe a big theater. So what keeps the one on the hill alive? How do we keep Fisherman's Marine Supply open when we build a Cabela's? Those are the concerns that I have. And I really have a huge expectation for whatever we do on this site to be at a level that no one else can see anywhere else. And you touched on that quite a bit tonight, but I haven't seen it. I haven't visually seen it. And I'm an artist, I'm an art teacher, I'm a visual person. And so far, I mean, even to some degree, those sketches are maybe getting somewhere closer to that, but I'm not seeing I'm not seeing it quite yet at that level. You know, the history is crucial to the city, and especially that site. And I think the way that this development can be successful, if it goes forward, is it has to tie to that history, and it can't tie to that history in some cheap, fake way. And that's a hard thing to do. So how do we tackle that without recreating a downtown Oregon City, without kind of cheapening the importance of that area? And what I am really curious about to some degree is in terms of the layout of the site, it's hard to lay out that site. In talking about gathering places and art and all of this, and the fact that we have an empty museum, we have a few, but at least that one I'm talking about right there. We can't do much commercially in terms of that site because it's a park. But what we do around it, we can sure as heck make sure is compatible to helping that site out. And so I guess I would like to see, when we're talking about a gathering place, the gathering place is really between the development and the museum, not in the center of the development. How do we tie the development that's around that museum to that site so that it comes back, and that there's a tie between the two? Right now, I see, an empty museum and a shopping center next to it, and there's no tie-in. And I think that's really going to be crucial. If we really want to encourage people to say, not to stay here, but come back into the downtown or into the historic part of the city. And so those are really the main concerns that I have. I've never, there's a lot of downtown business owners that really support this project. I've never understood how this is going to help downtown. And if I could see it, I think I could support it. But I don't see that connection, and I really fear that it's going to kill downtown. So how do we bridge the gap between that site and I know the hope is that the gap fills in if this is a success, but that's a big if.
Just a quick response?
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. Those are very valid concerns. And, the one thing I would say is, come with me and walk where we've built so far and look at the downtown.
Yeah, we've all been there.
I'm just saying, but, and I'd love to do it with you because I can show you, well, here's what it was like when we got there. We can show you pictures. We'll have the mayor come and join us or whatever. And I think that'll give you a comfort level that at least in all the projects we've done so far, we've actually been a net positive to the historic downtowns. I think the other side of it is, what you mentioned about going to Bridgeport, thank you very much, by the way. And but think about it, you're an Oregon City resident leaving Oregon City to go to Bridgeport. And you say, well, you don't go into the downtown. Well, why would you? Because you're not a resident. But if you were trained not to go to Bridgeport, if you could go to the best movie experience in Oregon.
Well, part of why I go to Bridgeport because I'm a teacher, and the only time I can get away from people is if I leave this city. So when I do a movie in a different city, then there's a chance they're not going to run into anybody.
And upgrading things and all that. Yeah. Well, but what I'm saying is that, again, establishing that pattern where people stay in their community to do their shopping, bringing people from Clackamas, from West Lynn, from Lake Oswego to come to Oregon City to shop is a big thing. And I think you can make that change. I think West Lake Oswego, West Lynn, going down to Stafford, all of those are your communities. They're going to be coming to this project. You're going to get people coming from Olympia, Washington. You know, because you'll save money if you do a Cabela's on a big purchase. People drive a long way. We get people from Northern California at our IKEA all the time. So if you can establish that, and then it's a take two to tango. Then it's a matter of working with the Historic Downtown Association. I'm actually going to have a meeting at 1:30 with that group tomorrow just to talk about these very issues, because I think it's really important. I was asked to be, and I served for years on the Gresham Historical Downtown Association while I was developing Gresham Station. We had a great rapport. We had trams that actually went from downtown to our site, and we actually paid for them because the merchants downtown, of course, didn't want to pay anything for anything. But anything that we can do, we can advertise. We can advertise stores. We can set up websites where downtown can participate. Our hope is that we'll create enough taxable revenue for the city where you can afford to do a street beautification, a storefront program, things that would really make it an attractive place to be. I spent a lot of time yesterday just walking here downtown. I walked for about 4 hours. It was kind of not too soggy, but just getting a feel for it. And it's capital starved. It's no wonder things die. I mean, you need a capital infusion in the city, and I think that our project is one way to do it. There might be others equally good or even better, but you need something to be a catalyst, and a catalyst that cares. And I think if you do that, and if you do it right, we had talked early on about even doing a roundabout at the end of Washington as you go to the historic, district, and so you kind of have something unique of an art piece there. If we're doing sculptures, maybe the downtown could do similar sculptures as they've done up in communities up in the Seattle area where you become a walking art community. There's so many things you could do that will be of great benefit. And then eventually, recreate the old paddle wheeler down at the dock. I mean, there's so many things that you could do, but you got to have capital, and without capital, it's just going to be, I don't know if it's a Pittsburghian death spiral, but it can be easy, to do it without something that's going to be a catalytic project. But they're very valid. I would so love to meet with you guys and talk about this. I feel like I haven't been able to, and
We feel the same.
We've asked again and again and again. But thanks for your comment.
Thank you. Commissioner West.
I have a little bit of lighthearted testimony tonight. After sitting here for city commissioner for 4 years, I just have to say that I've learned a little something from Dave Leland, our economic development consultant, and that is that women are the shoppers. So I get to be a subject matter expert on this tonight by virtue of being a woman and not a city commissioner. And I just wanted to say I do a lot of shopping at Bridgeport, and then when I do, I now know in Tualatin where the U.S. Bank is. I go to the Michaels there. Unfortunately, I'm not over here in Oregon City. Now I know where the post office is. I have lunch at the little taco shop there. I do unfortunately, even at Hagen's instead of my Hagen's here. I know where the Starbucks is. And I really do think that's how women and people you're saving gas, you're saving time, and that's how we shop. But that was just for a little fun. And I also heard you kind of name dropping or hinting around at a big box mass merchandiser from Minnesota, and I'm wondering if you'd care to share that name. It sounds like Target to me.
We have not been allowed to target any specific tenants at this point.
Wouldn't that be wonderful? Well, whenever you can.
It was kind of sweet, actually.
Okay, thank you.
But and again, I don't mean to be coy about that. It's just that we're not, typically the tenants, until the leases are signed and everything's done, they ask us to be very discreet. Because if we could have a commission vote against this project, and we've announced all this for nothing. So we're in a spot where but I will say that privately, I'd be happy to show you all the different letters of intent if you'd like to come and meet with us. We've done several of those with the council already. It's just, if anything we give you becomes public record, and of course we can't allow that to become public record at this point.
Commissioner Fokker.
Yeah, I wanted to add to Commissioner Smith's concern about Main Street. I think that's a common concern we hear from a lot of people as well. If you build the rivers, then Main Street's going to die. So I really was taken aback when you said that vacancy rate went from 30% to 5% in Tualatin. Is that right? That's amazing, and logically, in some aspects, I guess it makes sense, and logically it doesn't make sense if you use the analogy of we drive to Bridgeport and leave, but I could see it if you lived in Tualatin, how you might just stay. That said, I think we also need to be careful because we live in a democracy, and supporting small businesses and entrepreneurs is important, but at the same time, we can't do it to the detriment of free capitalism. I mean, with every time a Walmart comes into a town, there are businesses that go out of business. But for every time a Walmart comes into town, there are businesses who are smart enough to figure out how to use that to their advantage, and be it customer service or selection or specialization or really hooking into a niche. And I think for any of the businesses that are on the periphery of this proposed development, what they would need to do now is figure out how they would adjust, because that it will bring a lot of people to this region. And what they would need to do is figure out, and I'm an entrepreneur and I'm a business owner, and my job as a leader is to figure out what's next. Wayne Gretzky said, don't skate to the puck, you skate to where the puck's going to be. And if we know this is coming over the course of 3 years, that's plenty of time for the small business owners and entrepreneurs in the area to figure out what their best strategic move is. And I think as long as we're upfront and fair and open, I think it would be a tremendous opportunity for the small business owners and entrepreneurs in the area. So I just wanted to make that point. And I too am very concerned about business outside of the rivers, but I think it could be provide an amazing opportunity if people use their brains and think strategically about things.
If I may just respond very quickly, because again, we really care about that as well. One of the things, as a company, we choose not to do work with Walmart. There are some retailers that are predatory and probably do take a share of jobs out of the community. But at the same time, you think about someone, let's just use a Cabela's as an example. If they're not coming to Oregon City, they're coming to somewhere in Portland. They could go to Clackamas, they could find a sudden, who knows where they're going to be, but they'll be somewhere. They really, if they've decided to come here. So when you think about what happens for marine supply store or something like that, my view is if you're local and everybody's coming to the area, then it's that store's opportunity to take advantage of all those customers coming to the community, and have sales and get out there and step up the store. Retail is a subduction zone. If you don't reinvest in it, you get ground under. But if you have the opportunity to have more business and more people come, our theater at Bridgeport is doing about 1.4 million tickets a year. That's 1.4 million people coming to that, just the theater, not Bridgeport, of course, would be several million people. We just opened a new Orvis. It's the only Orvis store in town. We're getting people coming from Salem, from up north of Clark County, to come to the store because they're Orvis shoppers. And all the retailers around are saying, well, this is really cool. I've got all these people coming here now. Now it's my job to figure out how to get them. So part of, I think, your responsibility is, if you're going to have this kind of capital coming to town, how do you encourage the downtown association to take advantage of it? Put programs together so that it's not completely two-tone, where one looks really run down, the other looks all shiny brand new. And I'd love, if you'd like to put me on your downtown committee, I'd love to serve on it if our project is work, because I think it's fun to have these ideas and think about ways to do just what you're talking about. If you don't, you're missing a great opportunity.
Well, I'd like to put in, obviously, we hopefully hope to have many more discussions. We do have about 13 people, I think, signed up for public comment. I wanted to just make one personal comment. I support urban renewal and retail development, quality retail development at the site. That said, my family, my household has been affected by long-term unemployment, and we've personally supported urban renewal in this city for several $1,000s to this point. And I do have concerns about the public investment aspect of this project, particularly with respect to stores such as Cabela's. Cabela's currently, for every $1 of profits it receives, there's $1.37 of public investment. It will not build stores without public subsidies. I have concerns about the fact that Cabela's owners have recently cashed out over $1 billion of profits, and I do question in this economic climate, if things are so profitable, why is the public subsidy needed to support Cabela's and not we're not playing on a fair ground with Fisherman's Marine, who doesn't receive that benefit. So I do have that concern. I do have concerns about Cabela's. They have the highest debt to earnings in the whole country. And they also have the highest, second highest value to earnings. So I do have concerns about this particular company, and I would like to learn more about it as we continue our conversations. So with that said, I'd like to call on Mayor Norris.
Yes, thank you. I guess because the room is packed full of people, I would really like us to hear what people have to say, because I think that's important. When 3 years ago, I guess we started with this project. I think I'm the only one here that was here then, and there were so many benefits to the community. But I was very concerned about the downtown. So I've talked with Mayor Bemis, and I've talked with Lou Ogden a number of times, Mayor Ogden and Walton, and they both have such positive things to say about the effect on their community from Fred's developments, because I've specifically asked, I wanted to test Fred. Is he a developer of integrity? How does he deal with the community? And in all areas, it came up plus size. So I'm really eager to put the questions on the table. So I'm wondering if we may have to cut this short because we have some other business, that we can keep track of the questions people have and an outline of all of that, so that at a later time when the new commission sits, that we can drill down on the questions. But I think it's important, since so many people sent to speak, that we do hear from our community. So I urge we do that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, just one more thing. Excuse me. I also want to point out some letters that I received this week that are here on your agenda that the public may not have had a chance to see. But we received a support letter from Superintendent of Oregon City Public Schools, Roger Rada, talking about the positive effects of a more student enrollment on the financial health of the school district. So you can read that. And then there are a couple of other support letters here, so I just point out to you.
Okay, we're going to call two people at a time to try to get through this a little bit more quickly. We're asking that you limit your comments to 3 minutes or less, and our reporter will be keeping track of the time. So I'd like to call forward Commissioner Ann Leininger from Clackamas County and Commissioner-elect for Oregon City, Kathy Roth.
Thank you. I'm Ann Leininger, Clackamas County Commissioner. I'm speaking today in my individual capacity because our board hasn't taken a formal action on this. But I want to commend you for the tremendous work that you've done in showing a national, highly regarded company like Cabela's that this is a place that they want to be. I understand that there are potentially 1,500 permanent jobs to come out of the Rivers development, and I think there are legitimate concerns about the need to tie the Rivers development into the museum and make it something that synergistically, captures the fact that Oregon City is a place where history is important and history is a strong asset of yours. And it sounds like the conversations are underway, and you have a team here that has the intellectual wherewithal to try to think through those issues. So that's exciting. The thing that I really want to commend you on is all these jobs that you could be bringing to the community at a time when a lot of people really need them. I understand there are potentially 305 construction jobs, 480 indirect jobs, a lot of tax revenue that would come to your community to support important community work. And I think you're absolutely right. We need to make sure that downtown Oregon City, which has been made so spectacular through the addition of some important businesses, it's a great place to spend time, that we keep it lively, we make it more lively. And I want to personally pledge that in my role on the board, I want to be a strong partner in doing that. And I think it's an exciting thing that you've got in front of you, and I congratulate you, and I hope that we can work together to have this be a success that meets all the needs for design and downtown vibrancy and new jobs and new services in the community. Thanks.
Kathy Roth, Commissioner-elect, and I have my concern that I'd like to have raised tonight is the report that David Fraser got to us yesterday from CH2M Hill regarding the testing that's continually done on the landfill. And looking, the report that I saw gave from the year 2000 to the year 2007, November 2007, and the emissions are increasing dramatically. And so I would like to see a comparison of what happened at Bridgeport with their methane and CO2 levels as compared to what's going on here. Ours is not only migrating, but dramatically increasing. And to the point of where we've invented some new things, we've got some new drill holes going in to monitor things. There's concern about the building across the street, Metro's building. And so I would like to have those things compared to what has happened at the Bridgeport site and to see those things looked at. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next two speakers are Terrence Shoemaker and Vera Smith. And the next two after that will be Linda Orzen and Jackie Fishback.
I'm Terrence Shoemaker, Oregon City. And Oregon City is poised on the brink of mediocrity, destined to erect another altar to excessive consumerism, the River Shopping Mall. Alice North once said of the code development that it would help Oregon City find its identity. She also said rivers would be a feather in Oregon City's cap. There's only one end of the Oregon Trail, and that's Oregon City's principal identity. Oregon City identity lies waiting for someone with the vision and the will to bring it to the light. But our city government is poised to drive the last nail in the coffin of our identity if it approves this shopping mall. Rather than a feather in our cap, it's a black mark against us. A couple decades ago, blueprints of a beautiful plan for the Rawson landfill were developed. This visionary plan was the end of the Oregon Trail Pioneer Village and Living Historical Museum. A working door for the farms, people with clear address, working exhibit stores with products made on the site, and more. What happened to that plan? It was shelved by past city officials in their short-term quest for the holy grail of a tax base. The current scenario, the River Shopping Mall will just be one more shining example of our naive relationship with developers. For that, we get a feather on our cap? No, we get yet another extruded lifestyle mall with all its attendant stress on services and resources, and massive seasonal traffic jams that will follow these developments. Oregon City's identity? Driving force behind Senator Cal's proposal is profit, pure and simple. Oregon City will become just one more black mark on the slate of conquered communities, its identity buried by the inexorable march of development. In our quest for an expanded tax base, we are surrendering the one true identity that we have. Another scenario, Oregon City sets the goal of creating a national park at the end of the Oregon Trail. Aim high. Publicize this goal for the city, county, state, and the nation. Will and vision can establish momentum. This has not been done here before. Brainstorming as many citizens as possible, and wealth of knowledge and skills in this community is incredible. The goal will educate school children of all ages to the possibilities of the Living History Museum through a wide variety of activities. We can use the previous master plan as a guide and outline grants to pursue. Be a squeaky wheel, knock regularly at state, federal, and National Park Service funding grants for the Living History Museum. Organize all historical sites under one administrative umbrella. I ask you to consider this option for the good of the community. In conclusion, legacy has been defined as to plant trees under whose shade you will never sit. Will the trees you plant be extruded blocks of concrete and steel, altars to unbridled consumerism? Or will the trees you plant be living and lasting monuments to our vital place in history and our contribution to the settlement of Oregon? Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Mary Smith, and if your clock is not working. So I have a minute.
You have 2:58.
Okay. I am a resident of Oregon City. I have been in Oregon City for well in excess of 30 years and know a number of people in this room where I have worked on projects or have been at school functions with our children. Being said that, change is never easy, and I came to Oregon City before the big changes on Warner Parrott Road, and so I've been apprised of a number of changes that have happened here. I had some concerns about this project. One of the concerns was urban renewal funds and how was that being used. Being an accountant, I have real strong opinions about what money gets used for, and as long as it's being used for public good, then that's what that money was intended for. My second concern, particularly in this area for this project, is water detention and what we're doing with flood levels, because we've already done things that have raised the flood line in that part of town. We certainly wouldn't want to do something else that added to that problem. Those concerns of mine, which I believe from the comments that I've heard from the research that I've done so far, are being mitigated. They're on people's agendas to take care of. Oregon City, and those of us that have been here, we've been here for a long time. We love our city, but the fact of the matter is, I don't live in this city. I live in this city, I don't work in this city. So I am exposed to people from outside of the city who 20, 30 years later still refer to us as dump town, because that's what we were and that's what we've been, and we can't change that without money. It's a hard fact of life, but you're not going to do anything or change anything without money. And I'm here to say that I'm in support of this project. I realize that letters of agreement are not legally binding, but my goodness, we'd have an ace in our pockets if we could say we were the home of Cabela's. And I, for one, I shop at Fisherman's. I do a great deal of stuff at Fisherman's. I have a relationship with a gentleman who apparently seems to know what he's doing in that line, because my full-size freezer is over half full of fish, and he's saying that there's not a conflict between those two stores because they really have different market shares. I hold the pole and do what I'm told. I'm real good at making it. That being said, I'd like to have this here because I would be one of those people that drive up to Lacey to shop at Cabela's, and I'd just really rather shop at home. Thanks.
Thank you. Linda Orson and Jackie Fishback.
Hello. My name is Linda Orson, and I've also been a volunteer in this community for about 12 years. I know a lot of the faces in this room, and I also want to say that I am speaking in favor of the Rivers development. I have a few comments. One common concern was about urban renewal is citizen representation. But may I mention that there are citizens and business representatives on the commission as well as your elected officials. This community has representation on multiple fronts, especially through your elected officials. It's been suggested that urban renewal decisions be put to a vote by the people, but please be aware that elections do cost you taxpayer money, and I would urge citizens to show fiscal responsibility and ask your elected officials to make those informed decisions for the good of the whole community. Secondly, jobs, jobs, jobs. We need them here in Oregon City, and this development would bring those jobs to our community members who are currently out of work. Give your neighbors a chance to get back to work, especially in your own community. Tax dollars. A brownfield creates no tax income. Oregon City has been able to put itself off the verge of bankruptcy these last few years due to a lot of belt tightening. We now have a chance to increase our tax base through a major development. And I've also heard traffic issues. But we already have traffic going through Oregon City on 213 and 205. Thousands and thousands of cars every day come through 213. Why can't we capture some of those people that are traveling through our community to shop in our community and spend their money here? Main Street has been mentioned several times, and I think this development can only help Main Street by bringing more people into Oregon City. We have had our Main Street program going for 2 years now. We've brought 24 new businesses, I believe, to Oregon City. Mr. Cocker knows very well about bringing new businesses to Oregon City and being an entrepreneur. Now all we need are more shoppers. Carbon footprint. We talk about sustainability. Well, I would rather drive 3 miles down the hill to go shopping at a shopping center in my community instead of having to go to Bridgeport or Clackamas Community Center or Clackamas Town Center. It's our responsibility to be respectful stewards of our environment and its future by cutting down on our carbon emissions and the use of fossil fuels. Thank you for this time.
I'm Jackie Fishback. I'm an employee of the city, and I'm a citizen of the city. I've only lived here 15 years, and I absolutely love this area. And I have seen the struggle through my job, and I've seen the struggle through this city. It's the travel was great growing up, and this shopping center, I'm one of those really dumb people that love sports, and I've actually gone an hour and a half out of my way each way to go to Cabela's. So I'm a testimony to that. And I realize there's a problem with the historic area. Our take on that is, have you even thought of integrating things like our trolley to that shopping center? And why couldn't there be a turnaround at that shopping center with flyers at all those new stores that would give people tours on our historic district and bring those historic homes back up to par? Why couldn't that trolley run on a full-time basis? I've been on that trolley, and that's beautiful, but most of us that live here are not going to utilize that thing anymore, or in little increments. And think of the possibility of running that little outfit over there, that shopping center, and having people come down to Main Street to shop because they can take that trolley there. And make it a nominal fee so we can actually add some money to this community. I can't see anything but positive actions out of the shopping center. Historic values, destination. This place, Renewal is a destination store. It is a crown jewel of the sports shops in this whole state and in the nation practically. And living here in this community, I just want to see so many things happen, and so many things that will include growth. And I really see the historic things growing with this whole shopping center if we can just utilize our assets that we have now, and one of those being the trolley and our tours. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next four speakers, we have Ralph Groner, Dan Fowler, and then following would be Dan Holliday and Alan Keyser.
Who's the timer? Because I have a problem with time when I speak. Who's the timer? Would you let me know? Would you let me know when I have 1 minute?
I'll do that.
Yeah. I couldn't hear a word anyone said. I am hearing impaired, so therefore I am speaking loud because I'm guessing others in the audience are. My name is Ralph Groner, a resident of this community. I was born in Oregon City on the Hill, Molalla Avenue in 1941, December 25th. That's in other words, 10 days. I will be 69, so I've been here a while. I want to say to you, none of that matters to me because this ego is not in this thing. I've had a long trail of representing Oregon City as a legislator on the Revenue Committee, in the state legislature as a county commissioner, as one of the founding fathers who signed the urban renewal district for the town center, and I have so much I want to say, but I got to run it. The fact is, I see similarities between the dump. Yes, we didn't call it a landfill. When we were kids, we went down and got bottles and washed them so we could go to the pool to go swimming because 5 of us kids had no money. My dad worked at the mill. We had no car. We rode Mrs. Rinke's bus up the hill. There were 2,000 people. And I'm writing a book called The Chittum Years. I'm on chapter 10 for children. And you won't believe what's in it, but it's all true. The fact of the matter is, my background, I would like to say, let's retrofit Oregon City and refill it with the history of our founding fathers. My dream, and this is why this is hard for me on time, is for years, has been to take what you already put with the doc. I read the book Oregon City 20 times by Jim Tompkins, where I got my ideas. I'm now working on it with business people. Let's build a little museum, you don't have to put the money on it, of our river travel that occurred up and down the river. Let's then go to the park next door where the Indian tribes came from all over the Northwest with Indian houses and salmon baits. Then we go on the same old traverse over to what you call the rivers. I'd rename it. And in fact, let's make it several blocks long of the old history, modern, right around to the wagons. And now we take the people that are on the old bus or wheels downtown Oregon City, where we're going to have more capital investment on the same facades we have at the rivers, and finally, if the mill closes, I already have in mind what I want to see there. Let's be clear. That is, I have been to Virginia, and I have been to every one of the cities in this country that have used their history. That's our hobby, travel. And the fact is, you have a gold mine here, not just a business. You have got to take advantage of it because the schools, I understand why the superintendent supported it. We've gone from 30% of income tax when I was a young legislator funding kindergarten through 12 to 70%, and this project puts thousands of people to work. And if we do what I am suggesting, you will put more thousands of people to work, helping downtown, helping all of us. Is that 1 minute left? What? Another time, I just want to say this is LEED certified. I also lobby at the legislature. Thank you. I made a report. I intend to spend an inordinate amount of time trying to pass it if it means I have to go door to door and teach what the new urban renewal law did to Oregon, contrary to what I'm reading in the papers. I've had to put up with it too long. Thank you.
I have to follow that. Dan Fowler, I live in Oregon City, and I am a downtown businessman. First and foremost, I would like to applaud Fred for his vision and his desire to make our community better, and for him sticking through a pretty tough time. So, Fred, thank you, and I hope this project becomes a reality. Rocky, I thought you asked great questions, and I really mean that. Those were all right on point, and I think that what I get a sense from some of these meetings is that we have a willing partner who I think will really work and try to address those, because I think they do. I'd like to address a couple things. One is this whole connection issue. And I have to give my wife credit because she's the one that walked around with this clipboard, but she didn't want to come up here and talk. There's 34 names on this clipboard. This clipboard is only from Tony's Fish Market to the Kruger House, Tabernacle Bridge. 34 business owners and business tenants signed that in favor of this project. Now, that's the directest, that is the connection point that you're talking about now. Do they want it connected right? Absolutely, they want it connected right. Are they for it? They're for it. I think through good design and good cooperative planning, that can happen. I really believe that. But it is a critical piece. It is a very critical piece. Just a couple things, and people have said it, and Ralph alluded to it. Before Measure 5 and Measure 50, 70% of the property tax, 70% of our school funding came from property tax. 30% came from an income tax through the state. When we passed Measure 5 and 50 as a state, those have swapped. 30% of the funding from schools now comes from property tax. 70% of our funding for schools comes from income tax. The last time I looked, income tax was driven by jobs. Jobs will help our schools. I think that's probably a good reason why we had that. I got 1 minute. Economic spin, I can tell you, as a business owner down there, it will happen. There'll be economic spin with this. And right connections, good planning, again, will make that happen. With this project, you'll see North End move to housing. You'll see grocery come in if it's not a part of this. You'll see Class A office space. You'll see the connection with those properties from Maverick Welding to Subaru. You'll see that happen because value will help change that, and this will help create value. The last thing I'll mention is the connections with the history. I think it's right on the money. I think we can do it with the trolley. I think we can do it with good pedestrian connections between the mall and that. And I know we were talking with Fred about that before. That can happen again. So I just encourage, there's a lot we can do as a community, but I think we have the right people in place and a willing partner to help plan it and do it right. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have Dan Holliday and Ellen Kieser. Following that would be Dan Grogan and Tim Foster.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Alan Kinzer. I'd first like to comment that I'm here along with some other people after reading an article in the Clackamas Review asking for public comment. So we thought we'd come here and comment. Start with thank you very much for the invitation. I represent the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers here in Portland, Oregon and surrounding areas. I represent about 160 electricians that live in Oregon City, about 940 that live in Clackamas County, about 3,400 total. We currently have over 600 members out of work. What that means is that 1 out of every 5 of our members are out of work right now. We are in support of the Rivers Project. The project will bring much needed jobs building this project, maintaining this project, and ongoing employment provided by its tenants, as we've been hearing all evening. Cabela's is an awesome anchor tenant, especially for this community with its high interest in outdoor sports, not to mention the draw from outlying communities. Thank you for your time and effort to welcome us here tonight.
Thank you.
Well, my name's Dan Holliday. Most of you know who I am. So of any of the folks who testified tonight, I'm probably the closest thing to an expert on urban renewal, besides the folks of you up there on the board. I've studied the program. I've sat on the urban renewal board, so I understand the concepts here. Just for sake of disclosure, I am a member of IBEW Local 48, and one of the things I wanted to talk about tonight is for the last, let's see, it was April 15th, 2009, I was laid off. And since that time, I have worked about 2 months off and on. And I'm a pretty serious expert in the things that I do. As a low voltage guy, I have experience in all of the major crafts. So I'm qualified to do a lot of things. There just aren't a lot of jobs out there. And so one of the critical things that we have to talk about and we have to do, and we've talked about this in the election campaigns, is do the things that we can do to build jobs and to build jobs in our own community. D1X is starting at Intel, but those jobs are in Hillsborough. So if we're going to talk about, and you know that I'm not the biggest fan of some of these buzzwords, but if you want to talk about sustainability or carbon footprint or all the other hooey, taking guys who live in Oregon City and driving to Hillsborough and back every day certainly doesn't accomplish those goals. I actually asked the mayor for a couple of extra minutes, and I don't know whether I'll get them tonight or not because I had a lot of things that I wanted to say. But one of the critical things is that this community used that site for 40 or 50 years. Not just Oregon City, but surrounding areas, Clackamas, Portland, whoever, to dump their garbage, okay? So to say that now we're going to provide money to private entities to make money, that isn't the case at all. The urban renewal money that we're going to use for this project is going to make right, or at least partially right, what we already have done in the last 50 years by dumping that big hole full of garbage. In order for us to utilize that parcel of land for anything that is remotely commercially viable, we have to do all those pilings. I lived just around the corner from Doug when we were building Home Depot, and what we survived 6 months of them pounding pilings for 6 months just to build the Home Depot store. So there is a ton of infrastructure costs that wouldn't be necessary if you were down on the flats in Clackamas or in some other up off of Beaver Creek Road where that's all farmland and you basically have to grade it and pave it and away you go. So of all of the critical things that we have to talk about in urban renewal tonight is the infrastructure investments that we are making because of the public policy decisions that we made 40, 50, 60 years ago in allowing that to be a garbage dump in the first place.
Thank you very much. You're out of time. Okay, we have Dan Drogan and Tim Foster, followed by Terry Rigel and Curtis Monty.
I'm Dan Grogan. I'm the president and owner of Fisherman's Marine and Outdoor. The elephant in the room, I guess. I've lived in Oregon for my whole life, 49 years. excuse me, got kind of scribbled this stuff out. So I do find it somewhat insulting that anyone finds the need to replace a hunting and fishing store that has been an Oregon City shopping center for 50 years. We have not been there for 50 years. We've been there for 15 years and took over for good friends of ours, Larry's Sports Center. What the rep of the Rivers Project didn't say is if you go out to Airport Way and you go out to Cascade Station, on the other side of Airport Way and the other side of 205, you have multiple empty big boxes that are eyesores. They're eyesores, and there's plenty of retail space, and we're looking at the west side right now, and there's plenty of retail space to look for. What the mall will do is it'll displace theaters. The theater will displace the theater, sporting goods store will replace the sporting goods store, the dining will replace dining. You'll simply be displacing other business. Retail is not expanding. It expanded to an overabundance, and now it has contracted. G.I. Joe's has gone out of business, so we're still out of business. Now Dick's is here. I mean, there's not a lack of retail. So it's expanded and it's contracted. And I think right now, there are retail businesses stay in business because it's right size. It's right size itself, and that's always going to be the case. Lastly, this is about money. This is period about money. This is about a developer getting tax dollars that we have paid into for 15 years. The citizens here have paid for it. Cabela's always asked for it. Any place in the country you go to, that's their big deal, is getting a bunch of tax dollars. I didn't come to the city and ask for tax dollars. I didn't ask that. We give it to schools. We always have in this community. And anyway, I guess that's my deal. But, you know, Cabela's runs a good operation, but they do ask for tax dollars. And I guess when times get tough for us, which the last 3 years have been extremely tough, you know, when I come down for tax dollars and tax breaks to keep me in business, I would expect the same respect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Tim Foster. I'm the Assistant Business Manager of IBW Local 48. I'm also here to talk in favor of the Rivers Project. It's not just the electricians that have been out of work. The building trades in general have had a higher unemployment than pretty much everybody else. We're at 25 to 30%. That's thousands of men, women out of work. Trained people. We have awesome training programs sitting there ready to build your lead certified because we're trained in that. We know the solar. We know how to build everything. We need jobs. People need to go to work. This is a great opportunity to get on the leading edge of the recovery because it is coming. And we know that this space is going to be used. And we know that the Bridgeport project, which I live next to, has done a fantastic job of bringing in customers, developing that area. When there was old buildings that weren't looking very good, they were remodeled, they were replaced. It creates work, it creates tax base. We need the jobs. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next two speakers are Terry Rigel and Curtis Monty, followed by Christopher Edwards and Vicki Yates.
Good evening. My name is Terry Rigel. Not to beat a dead horse, but I represent IDW Local 48 members as well. And I just came here tonight on behalf of working people in general, not just my members, but just average everyday working folks. Give my opinion on the Rivers Project. And, you know, a lot of this is going to be beating a dead horse. I've been through a lot. I should have went first, but you know, not only will this job produce construction jobs that are greatly needed in the short term, but obviously will produce long-term jobs. You know, as individuals, we all might have our own opinions on what should be done with this project, but it is hard to argue that putting people back to work is a bad thing in an economy like we're in. You know, it's already been talked about several times, but, you know, it will stimulate other businesses. People come to the Rivers, there's some that are likely to eat and maybe fill up their gas tank on their way out or stop by Home Depot to get some stuff for their little home improvement project they got going on. But, you know, like I said, we all have our own opinions, but I also believe the Oregonians need to get back to work. The statistics show that Oregon's unemployment rate's right around 10.5%, which puts us in 7th place in the nation. With that being my case, I just hope you guys look at all the facts before you make the decision on, I think it's a golden opportunity not only to create some jobs right now, but some long-term sustaining jobs, bring people to the area, and I just think it's a good thing all around.
Thank you.
My name is Curtis Monty. I'm an apprentice in Local 48. I just recently moved into the Clackamas area off Sunnyside Road about 3 months ago because I like the area, and I think it's a good opportunity for not only construction but people to work in the retail end of things, because once that development comes in, like the gentleman said, that's 200 jobs. People will be coming from Vancouver, Eugene, up and down the I-5, 205 corridor. That's another part of the equation that's good too. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. And we've got 2 additional speakers. 3. Christopher Edwards, Vicki Gates, and Rose Golden.
Hi, I'm Vicki Yates. I live and work in Oregon City. I find myself getting very caught up in the excitement of this project tonight because I think there are some really good things about it. But I have a lot of concerns about it that were very eloquently expressed by Commissioner Smith and Commissioner Walters. So I hope that you really address those issues before you make a decision on this matter. And looking at the vacancy rates that were quoted in Tualatin, that the vacancy rates apparently went from 30% to 5%, on first blush, wow, that looks fabulous. But I'm not a statistician like Doug, but numbers are tricky, and it makes sense that the higher the number of businesses in a new shopping center, the better the vacancy rates will look in a city as a whole. So the new shopping centers added businesses themselves will markedly reduce the overall vacancy rate in the city. And this those statistics don't necessarily mean that the vacancy rates in other parts of Tualatin went down from 30% to 5%. So it still could have a negative effect or not improve the rest of the city. So I hope that there's a further analysis of this before those numbers are bandied about. About where the vacancy rate declined and when it occurred, whether before or after the recession. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Christopher Edwards, and I've lived in Oregon City all of my 40 years. I'm very proud of Oregon City's history and my family's history. My great-grandmother Snido was one of those people who came across the country. Some of you might recognize Snido Drive in West Lynn. And I can't help but think of the parable of the gentleman who was stranded on his rooftop during a flood. And as boats kept passing by and eventually a helicopter came down and he kept saying, no, God will save me. And he met St. Peter at the pearly gates and said, hey, what's up? Why am I dead? And he said, we sent you some boats and a helicopter. What more do you want? And I just feel like here we are. I've watched Oregon City grow and not grow my whole life. And here we are with this wonderful opportunity to grow. And yes, we have some challenges. They can be met. As a teacher, I see students meet those challenges every single day. So let's meet them and let's grow the way that we should. I think we can have it all. I think we can have a retail district that, no offense to Fisherman's Warehouse, but I don't think, and also the memory of Larry's Sporting Goods, I don't think that they ever drew people from Bend, from Eugene, from Medford. I've heard of people from California driving up to Olympia to see that store there, they do it right. And they do it in a way that I think we would be proud of. Cabela's, I think, would be a good anchor. But no matter what, I think it's time for us to do this. I think we need to move forward. And at some point, you have to do something. Here we are. Please move forward. My kids in the Oregon City School District, all three of them, they want to see this. Okay. My family, boy, especially my brother, who drags me out duck hunting whether I want to or not. He wants to see this. Oh my gosh, he wants to see this. But I want to see something where that old dump used to be. And I hate to think if we passed on this now, who would come in and say, you know, oh sure, yeah, dump, that sounds like a great idea. Let's go there. No, let's meet those challenges. Let's solve those problems. Thank you.
Rose Holden. Are there any other speakers that would like to, Vicky, would you give the recorder your card, please? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rose Holden, and I also lived here all my life. And not to be redundant, I don't think I'll go over all of my notes that I have, as most everybody has covered all of the good points for having the Rivers Shopping Complex here, and I also support it wholeheartedly. As a business owner in the community, I really hate having to drive a long distance to get my office supplies or to get whatever I need to have to run my business and personal items that I would really prefer to get it within my own community. As gas prices continue to rise, even though I do drive a Prius, I would much prefer to stay within my own community and support local. I would ask our folks to look maybe at the bigger picture here and not quite on such a micro level. Oregon City has struggled off and on through the years. We've had the mill, it goes on strike, people are out of job, out of work, then they have their jobs, then they don't. And this has been an on again, off again thing for Oregon City, and how to fix things so that we don't find ourselves in this dilemma all the time is diversity. We need to diversify, and we need to have a variety of things. We need to meet a variety of people's needs and not just one type of person or people. So I find that while I can empathize with Fisherman's Warehouse, I too have been on the side of on the other side of government subsidies when Stone Creek came in, and it had its effect for a while, but people are loyal, they come back, and if you're purposeful, you survive, you find your niche, and that's part of being in business. And as far as the downtown goes, that's part of being in business. You find a way to survive and thrive, and that is what we do. I attended the Oregon Business Summit on Monday, as I know several people in this room did, but for the benefit of those that didn't, there were some profound things said there, and one of them, referring to the state of Oregon, of course, but taking it down to the city of Oregon City, if we don't want growth, we will always be a low-income state. Well, if we don't want growth, we will always be a low-income city. We have got to embrace the development that wants to come and settle here. We have got to help them succeed. That is our future. That is where the jobs are going to come from that are going to help to pay for the things that we want. And public money needs to help to make that happen. It was Franklin Delano Roosevelt that helped get us out of the Depression.
we do have other items to get to, and we are out of time, so thank you very much.
More to say.
And then finally, we have Sean Dackler.
My name is Sean Dackler, and I'm a resident of the city, and I work across the interstate from Bridgeport Village. And so first I want to talk about traffic. We were all scared when Bridgeport Village came in. What would that do to my commute around the Booth Ferry interchange? What's it going to do to the businesses, the restaurants around? I was very skeptical, probably more so than most. But the two keys that I see today, years later, is one, I can get through those intersections with ease. There is no traffic problem, no matter what time of the day I go through. And two, the property value has increased. The company I work for was built in '65 when it was the only business between there and the next exit down in Tualatin. Our property value has increased. We had a vacant building for 10 years behind us that is now leased. All the businesses around are full. And then my second point that's really important, it hasn't been talked about a lot here, but that's tourism. We want our museums full. We want them successful. So I'm going to bring up the state of Kansas. And I'm going to go to Kansas and talk about the History Channel. The History Channel in November said the #1 tourist destination in the state of Kansas is the Cabela's in Kansas City. It brings in over 4 million visitors per year and is considered more of a natural history museum than a store. So, I'm also one of those that has traveled to Lacey to visit the Cabela's up there. I also then shopped across the interstate, had lunch across the interstate, and while all of us residents might get comfortable with Cabela's and not shop there that often, there's a lot of other people that will, and on Saturday afternoon they may say, what else could we do while we're here? We can go down to the new park, Johnstone Park, we could go to the end of the Oregon Trail Museum. So I see this as a wonderful, successful opportunity for the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your comments and time. Moving on to the next agenda item. Yes, your noise.
Actually, before we move on to the next item, I think it would be appropriate to have a summary of where we go next, so that we understand what the trajectory is of the process.
Is it? Well, we have too many people in the building, and really lock the doors. But most people are leaving.
I don't think I would advise you.
I wish we had a grand city hall, an old one.
Sure, well, just to address your question, I think one thing that we'll need some direction from is their timing on proceeding with a DDA, development agreement. And one thing that we have been discussing is the possibility of continuing to work on that and bringing it forward in January or possibly February once we have a new commission. And one thing I wanted to point out about the draft DDA that we have been working on is there is a requirement in it, at least in the draft we have now, that if it is approved, the developer, in this case CenterCal, has 3 months to come back to the agency with a site design, details on their building facades and their layout, and the use of certain, the materials that they've been talking about. So under that agreement, if it is approved, has a formalized process for your review of several of the topics that have been discussed tonight. And I also know that as part of the process, the developer has stated tonight and several other times that he would want to conduct a number of charrettes that could be both with you and with the public. So that's, I think, another thing that we'd want to work into the schedule. So that's just a general idea. I think in terms of the exact timing, I think we'll probably need some direction from you that you do want to proceed, but if you do, then can get more specific about setting dates.
If I might add to that too, since Mr. Burning is here, we probably ask him to address that because the city staff has had previous direction from you to proceed toward a DDA, but we've done our draft work, and so now the DDA is actually with Mr. Burning. I believe, Mr. Burning, you and I discussed this. Are you comfortable letting the commission know about when you anticipate coming back with the DDA that we can bring here? Yeah, I'd just like to let them know what the next step is.
Well, yeah, thank you. We would like to get a DDA executed and completed within the first couple months of 2011, because we have a lot of work to do. And from that point, when we have a signed DDA, there's probably, let's say, 3 months of work on design, 6 months of work with DE2, a lot of work still to do. The opening date would be spring of 2013 to be concurrent with the jug handle improvements, but we have a lot of work to do between now and the spring 2013 opening. So we would like to move forward. We recognize with the new council, a new commission, that it's not fair to ask the current council to vote. So we'd like to hope the new council will address it early in the year. With working with our tenants, it's like herding cats, and so keeping them on board and making sure that they all hang with us. A lot of things are time sensitive. And so one thing I would like to say is that in our discussions with Cabela's, they are not achieving a major subsidy any more than a major anchor in another center. We explained that to them when we first talked. The subsidy is for infrastructure. So we're not changing numbers from what was originally happened, even though Cabela's is new to the project. So again, and we'd be happy to discuss these things if we're given the opportunity. And if I might just say one thing again, there was a comment that was made earlier about empty boxes by Cascade Station. We did cause one of those boxes. The Best Buy was half the size it was, and they doubled their size, but they also doubled their sales at Cascade Station. The other empty box, I believe, is a Linenson thing where the whole chain went out of business. They weren't caused by our project. And I think that's just important. I mean, I can understand feelings, but I'd also like to be accurate. But we'd love to move as quickly as possible, and I think, to my knowledge, there are no open items remaining in the development agreement from our standpoint, if it's acceptable to the city.
Thank you. Chair Walters, one other thing I'd like to get some direction from this commission on is I've talked to some of my city commissioners and a few of you who have had questions that are probably more probing and more detailed than the available time at one of these forums like this. And Mr. Burning has offered a couple of times to meet with members of the commission and smaller groups, and also to facilitate tours for those of you that would like that. So what I would like to do is get some direction from the commission. If you want me to proceed and arranging those, I think that it would be more helpful even to our newly elected officials who might be interested in learning more about the project, and to any of you who are going to be faced with making some decisions here. So I'd like to have some direction from you tonight, given that invitation, so that I know how to proceed.
I think we can discuss. One thing I would be interested to see for the benefit of the public, we've had a lot of information, presented to us that supports this development, and I think it's important that the public have the full benefit of all the information that comes out, including answers to the questions that have been raised that haven't been answered yet. I don't know what the forum would be for that. Probably some kind of written response.
Are you talking about the questions that you submitted earlier?
Yeah, and I've got 5 additional pieces of information regarding financial position of Cabela's, and
I think it'd be great for me also to get direction from the commission as a whole on whether you want, because most of the questions that you posed, that was about a month or so ago before our last meeting, most of those questions have to be, the information that you're asking is not in possession of city staff, or those are questions that have to be answered by the developer. So if the commission wants, all we can do is ask the developer to respond to those. we could even set up a separate work session for the developer to address those. But that would be a commission decision, and I would certainly try to facilitate whatever you decide with regard to those.
I have a quick question, actually, of Mr. Breen. This development doesn't hinge on Cabela's coming or not, is that correct? If Cabela's decided they didn't want to come, is all bets are off? Right. It seems like everybody's so concerned with Cabela's this, Cabela's that, but this whole project isn't Cabela's. This is much bigger than Cabela's, correct?
You need to come up. Yeah, you need to come to my phone.
Again, our project originally did not have a store like Cabela's in it, and that's one of the reasons you see a different site plan tonight, because we had to rework it. Literally, we could fill the project up and then some without them. But they are a unique tenant. We believe in them. We would actually be investing probably about $20 million in their stores, so we want to believe in their success and their long-term viability. If they didn't go forward, though, we're absolutely confident we can have a very successful center with or without them. But there's a song from the 60s I promised my wife I'd never listen to. You're not with the one you love, love the one you're with. We actually are more inclined to think that the good of a Cabela's far outweighs not having them in the project, and I, for one, would be a strong advocate to keep them in.
If I might word there, pose a question.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure I understood. You were saying that Center Cal is investing $20 million in Cabela's under this scenario?
The plan would be that we will build their building for them,
Okay.
and it would be a lease.
So again, going back to the fact that you're asking for public subsidy, you can call it for infrastructure, you can call it for candy canes, I don't care. The fact is that you're asking for this community to come up with $26 million to support this retail. And
But what I'm saying is that number did not go up because of Cabela's. The number is for infrastructure. It's for the $25 million cost of piling. It's for roads. It's for mistakes the city made over generations that has to be cured. The retailer can only pay a certain amount of rent, and the nationals have choices. They can go to Oregon City, or they can go to Clackamas, or they can go to Portland. Mayor Sam is actively recruiting Cabela's, to several sites, so we have to be competitive. But what I'm saying is the number is not going up because of Cabela's. It would be that number. And if you don't like our project, then don't do our project, but it's not due to Cabela's that the number is what it is.
Question I pose.
Mr. West.
Fred, any chance of a freestanding gym going in I see 24-hour fitness has been building a lot over town. Any chance for a good, high-quality gym over here?
An excellent chance. We haven't signed a lease or anything or a letter of intent with one right now, but we've worked with all the major ones from Crunch to LA Fitness. I guess we have to call it OC Fitness up here to be. But basically, we would have. I think it makes a good thing. Again, it's part of the placemaking. It's something for everybody. Spa works well as well. You have your workout, you get your spa treatments done, you go shop, maybe a grocery store. Right. I mean, there are a lot of elements that I think would work very well in the center. But we would have certainly more ideas for tenants than we have room for tenants in the project, and there'll be a lot of other areas around our site that I think could
that maybe have
benefit.
to go on secondary.
I get a little uncomfortable when people are asking about business models of different businesses and so forth, but in terms of the viability of the businesses, when you're looking to work with a partnership with them, you do look at their business models to find out whether you think they're going to work there over the long period, and I presume that's what you do.
If we didn't, it would be the last deal we'd ever do with CalSTRS, I guarantee you. But that's why our portfolio is 98% occupied. We watch that very carefully, and the centers that you see that are vacant are the ones that did leases with Circuit City and Linens and things when everybody knew they weren't long for the world. But you watch that very carefully, and I've worked on probably 150 retail centers in my career. Again, one of my first assignments, I was real estate counsel on Clackamas Mall for Sears Roebuck and Company. I was real estate director for Sears. It's a boring life, but I do know retail.
Mr. Crocker?
Well, hang on one second. I just want to make this. I want to make sure everybody's clear on this. That the amount that this project is asking for from Urban Renewal is to make right what has been done wrong over the last few decades because people have been dumping trash onto that piece of ground.
Yes, sir.
And all we're trying to do is invest money that will be paid back with the tax increment that will come from the increase in property value. We're investing that to make the ground basically put on a level playing field with any other site around the region.
That's correct, sir. And for example, the Oregon City Shopping Center didn't have to build on landfill. Didn't have to deal with road repairs that we're not really responsible for, but we have to fix because it's broken right now. As the gentleman said regarding Bridgeport, the traffic there is better today than before we got there.
But I want to make it clear because all these people are saying that Cabela's insists on tax breaks, Cabela's insists on this, and they have to get public subsidies. That's not the case. What is being done here is we are making right a piece of property that was done wrong a long time ago, and we're not even paying for it up front. We're reimbursing the project after it's done and after we start getting tax increment from the project. We have nothing, we have minimal risk. Unless you do the deal, unless you do the project, you do it right, you do it how we want it done, and you get the tenants and you increase the property value, we got nothing to lose. Almost nothing.
Well, you have opportunity cost, I guess, because you could have done a different project or something. But I would say this, that, I never graduated from the Homer Williams School of Development, where, give me your money up front and then I'll maybe deliver something. The way this project, and this is the first urban renewal deal we've looked at in Oregon, or really anywhere in the last decade or two. The only reason we need it is because the site is so broken. It's not broken because of Cabela's. It's not broken. We're not asking for more money now because Cabela's is part of the project. We knew what the cost was. When Cabela's came and we started chatting with them, the one thing I said was, I can't give you a subsidy like you've been getting around the rest of the country. This isn't, Oregon has no sales tax. There's no justification for it. And again, I don't want to go, they're a fine company. I don't want to sound like I was trying to agree to them, but I think they understand. And they're not going to get that elsewhere. That's why you don't have a Cabela's or a Bass Pro or someone in Oregon yet, because those subsidies have not been, and I don't think should be available to tenants like that. So the numbers for the infrastructure is to replace what's broken. The way the development agreement states is we front end all those dollars, and unless we deliver, I think the DDA says 80% at least minimum of the square footage that we promise, we don't get a nickel back. And if we do 80% or more, we only get paid back to the extent our project generates the increment to pay it back. I don't know of any of the developers that would do that today, quite honestly.
So we don't have to pay you back unless you generate your own increment to pay yourself.
That is correct.
Yeah. Okay.
I just wanted to time check. We're scheduled to wrap up in 15 minutes, and we've got another couple of agenda items.
I do apologize, Sharon.
You were invited back.
So, do we have enough direction for, should we wait for the next urban renewal session to discuss further with the new council?
Well, what I'm proposing is to get some direction from you about setting up, attempting to set up some meetings with you and the developer to either go on a tour or to ask more in-depth questions. So why don't I propose this? What I'm proposing is that I go ahead and start trying to set up those. None of that will happen until after January 1st. And frankly, most of it probably would be closer to the end of January, might even go into February, because many of you have lots of demands on your schedule, and that would be a question of getting people together at a series. I just want to know if the commission wants me to start trying to facilitate that communication, because a number of our commissioners have said, I've been wanting to talk to you about this project, and the developer has been saying, I've been wanting to talk to you about this project, so I'm trying to facilitate that. And I want to know if this commission would like to give me direction to do that so I can proceed.
I'd be a little concerned if you're talking about going all the way to February, because it sounds like the DDA has to come forward.
It has to happen before you get your...
That's right. So I would say if among the, whether it's the incoming members of the commission, we don't know what the composition yet is going to be of the Urban Renewal Commission, but we do have the current members are going to be
You
on
have to
it.
round up the identifiable suspects.
That's right. And so
And start putting everybody together, but I don't want to do that without your direction.
I think we have to do it, and we have to do it quickly.
So can the commissioners
That
all,
would be my feeling as well.
could I have a show of hands, perhaps, of those who want me to do that? All right, let's be unanimous. Thank you for your consent.
Thank you. And, do you have a comment?
Yes, I get to have the last word. This is the last time I get to talk about this project. It seems to me that it is a catalyst for Oregon City. We've been working with this project since the very beginning. It's gotten better. We've set limits when we began to talk with Fred about the things that we wanted to be in the development, and he's delivering. Are all the T's crossed and I's dotted? No. But I have confidence that this group and in partnership with the community will accomplish that because we have a willing developer. I've met during my 8 years with many different developers, and I'm not seeing this kind of offer to pay costs up front, to add elements that are important to the community, and I just hope you don't let this go. I don't get to vote on it, but I will definitely be out there cheering for it. I also want to thank Dave Leland for his work. Dave with a national reputation, working with retail centers, and he's told us over and over again that there's no other project like this in the state of Oregon. We're very fortunate to have it. And I know David predicted that, that if this goes away, he doesn't see what else we can attract. And without a project on the north end, we don't have money to use to do the other projects that we want to accomplish. So again, it's a balancing act, but I encourage you to make the right choice because I'm sure high on this project. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we'll move on to the next agenda item. Item 5B.
Commissioner Walters, I need to recuse myself from item 5B, conflict of interest.
Thank you. You still have a point. Okay. And this is for the storefront improvement urban renewal grant at 502. I see they're going a little crazy here. 502 7th Street.
Thank you, Chair Walters and members of the Commission. This is, again, a storefront grant application. You heard this application at your last meeting on December 1st. And one of the questions that you had was how do the proposed storefront improvements by the applicant, Trish Williams, meet some of our criteria, specifically on bringing this building back to its original character. And as you recall, this building was built in the 40s. It's a concrete structure with steel windows and doors. And so the architectural quality is not that of a turn of the century building, but it does meet the intent of the program, which was to bring the building back to its original configuration. And one thing you'll see in your packet on page 15 is a picture of 502 7th Street, the original department store. And I think that was really helpful in the staff's analysis of this proposal. And it made it a lot clearer to us that, for instance, for example, the awnings that are proposed to be built on Center Street will match the original awnings, which are fairly simple concrete flat awnings. And we also found that the doors and the windows proposed on the Center Street side will match the style and the materials that were on the Malala Street side, 7th Street side, I'm sorry. And then also there was a discussion last time of the planter that was proposed, and I think the materials are now proposed to be similar to the building, which is poured concrete. So, the staff is recommending approval of this grant for $20,000. And just a summary of our storefront program, we have a balance of $120,000 in the program as of today, and that money should be spent by the end of this fiscal year, which is June 30th. So with that, I think Trish wanted to speak a little bit about some of the updates on her project.
Please give your name and plans.
Not sure I'm addressing this has been a really interesting experience for me. Learning how things work within within the program, and applying for, this is the first grant I've applied for. I think that we've overcome the objections or clarified the points about what we're trying to accomplish. I'm a terrible model builder, but it was kind of recommended that we should try to get a picture of what it's going to look like, which is what I tried to accomplish here. Extending the awning that exists now to cover 2 new openings is in keeping with what the architect, I believe, had in mind when he built the rather unattractive box that we own. All that we're attempting to do is to bring it up to current code, with doors that, well, egress is kind of an issue when you don't have, when the only way to get out of the building is with 2 doors. It's not safe. So we're trying to address that issue. And energy efficiency obviously is a concern when there's gaps like this in most of the wood doors that weren't there in the first place. The planter box, there was some conversation about it, and what we decided amongst after the conversations was that the best thing to do would be to, instead of use a brick, which I thought was kind of attractive, it's not really in keeping with what we think the architect intended. So it would be actually the brick planter, if it's approved, wouldn't be a brick planter, it would be a cinder block planter with a stucco facade match the structure. I'd love to answer any questions you have about what we're intending. Any questions?
I do have one thing to get out of this.
Commissioner New.
Trying to allow you to.
Thanks, I appreciate it. Anyway, there was the question, I think you referred to it maybe in your letter or something this time around about the question of the doors opening out or and being recessed. Has that issue been resolved?
I believe so. As much as I'd like the doors to open in, building code requires they open out.
Right.
So, and we addressed that when we had our meeting, and the doors have to open out.
Right. I imagine the concerns of them opening out had to do with opening into the sidewalk area, but is that the case now?
Our sidewalk is 62 inches wide. This will not impact the required 36 inches. In fact, it provides more.
Right. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'd like to make a comment. I just wanted to acknowledge the work that the staff has done, as well as all of the work that you've put into this. We have never seen a model before. And I really appreciate the effort you've gone to address the questions that have come up and work with the staff. So thank you very much. Commissioner Smith.
I would basically echo the same comment. If we had photographs and history reference like this in all the applications that we got, or the first time around we got, it's so important. And I've moved this building way back, so I kind of know to some degree how it looks. But it's crucial that we expect that the applications that we get in the future go into that depth with the photographs. The photographs are there, and so it's easy to find them, and it's just great to kind of go back and see, okay, what we're doing is right, and so it helps so much. Appreciate it.
I can't take credit for the photographs. I have a very motivated tenant in that building who did not want me to use the other application. So she found the photos for me, and I looked. It's very hard, but Karen is the one who found this.
I assumed.
Very much.
I move that we adopt this, or that we approve this storefront grant in the amount of $20,000.
Second? Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Does that have to be fair? Oh, I'm sorry.
Discussion about the second. As much as I would like to vote to approve this, I agree not to vote on any urban renewal storefront grants, but I think it's a good job and I'm for it in spirit.
I'll keep the mural because I do like so much of that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Do you have a forum for?
Yes, we do.
All right, please call vote.
Commissioner Neely.
Aye.
Commissioner West. Aye. Commissioner Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Norris.
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw.
Aye.
Commissioner Crocker.
Abstain.
And Commissioner Walters.
Aye. I guess we have 6 sides. Motion passes. Thank you so much. And so let's see, we have the minutes from the November 3rd meeting. Does everyone have a chance to review those?
Move approval of the minutes from November 3rd.
Call for vote.
Commissioner Neely.
Aye.
Commissioner West.
Aye.
Commissioner Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Norris.
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw.
Aye.
Commissioner Crocker.
Aye.
Commissioner Walters.
Aye.
Did not return. Okay.
Do we have a city manager's report?
I'm going to postpone my report until the next commission meeting, given the need for recess before the next meeting.
I would like to just thank the current chair that is not here tonight, Don Slack. I know his term is ending, and I just like to acknowledge all of his service and work. We really appreciate everything he's done for us, and I also believe that Mr. Crocker will be leading us, as well as a couple of our elected officials. So it's been really an honor to be on the board with you, and wish everyone the best. And thank you for your service.
And I would like to thank members of the Urban Renewal Commission. You give so much, especially the citizens member, and your preparation has been excellent. The expertise and experience that you bring to the board has been terrific. So keep up the good work. I've really enjoyed serving with you.
Okay, so with that, I'd like to call for the adjournment. Okay, thank you.